Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Bula Vanaka, Submission Radio is back here, episode 154. It's the 4th of April. I'm back from Fiji. Look at that, Fiji bitter. And you can see that because how about this? Submission Radio has gone on video. This is our first video show. We thought, what better time to do this after our little break with UFC 223 around the corner. So it's going to be a wild ride here today, Cass.
Yeah, we've got a lot of fun times, a lot of sexy guests on the program, sexy, spicy guests. We've got, of course, John Morgan joining us. I wanted to say live from New York. He's not really live from New York, but he is from New York. So he's going to be joining us on the program, discussing all the fun stuff that he's had to cover as an MMA outlet, dealing with April Fools, this whole Tony Ferguson falling out of the fight, Max Holloway jumping in, breaking down the card. Also, Jimmy Smith. Yes, that's right. The Jimmy Smith that will be commentating this very weekend. He is coming back to the program after a very, very long hiatus. He's going to be breaking down some of the more technical aspects of Max Holloway versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, so I'm very excited to be chatting to him. Dave Meltzer, well, he's the king of the pay-per-view numbers. He's going to be talking about some of the big storylines heading in here. Ronda Rousey in the WWE, of course, UFC 223, Conor McGregor, a whole bunch of other things. Also, the hilarious comedic stylings of Tommy Toehold. It's a preview show. It's a Submission Radio preview show, so of course that is always in the book. So we'll have Tommy Toehold on there, dropping some hilarious laughs for you guys. And yeah, it's a sexy, spicy show. I'm curious though, Dennis, how was Fiji before we get to our first guest? A couple of quick highlights. I saw some pictures of you. You were carrying some children, some local children. You were looking like a beast, looking like a tank. They were like on you. I couldn't tell whether they were like climbing you like King Kong or whether you were stealing them like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. What was some of the fun times in Fiji?
Yeah, Fiji was great. It was a really, really good time. And a quick shout out. It was interesting. We stayed in a resort called the Radisson Blue in Denaroo, which is in Nadi, in the Nadi area. And the people running the boats, they were actually related to Ash's family, Evolution Fiji. So Bula Vanaka to those dudes. Thanks for giving us a great time. And got a big carton of Fiji Gold, chucked it in the fridge. So I saved a fortune of money, even though they say it's the ladies' beer. I enjoyed it quite a lot. And, of course, the Fiji bitter down there in the back is the new mug of choice here in the Dennis household. The village tour that you mentioned was the highlight of the trip. I highly recommend everybody does that when you guys go up to Fiji. You go up there, and it's a little bit of a scam where you go in there and the kids hold your hands and you sort of give them a present. But the thing is, it is pretty poverty-stricken, and I was able to do something really fun over there. It's interesting that you mentioned that. Apart from tanking a couple of kids around and throwing them around and showing them a couple of flying Superman punches and taking a couple of kids out, those kids needed to go. There were a couple of dogs that were a little bit malnourished down there, so I went around and I bought off some locals.
Did you give them the Fiji beer? Did you get the dogs drunk?
No, well, look, the beer was mine, and even if the dogs needed it, they were never going to get it. But I was able to pay off some locals, and I was able to get the dogs fed. So The dogs will be fed for some time. I've got them added on Facebook. They'll be sending me Facebook updates about the dogs. I was able to hook up some kids with some cool stationery, books, and all that kind of stuff. So really recommend people go out there. It was a lovely time. Actually, the girlfriend, Ash, it was her birthday. Up in Fiji, we went up on her actual day of the birthday, and they sang her happy birthday, and she cried. It was a very, very emotional time for everybody there. And again, we know it's a little bit of a scam. People go there, you give them presents that they need it for money, but the way that they live down there, it's great to give them money directly rather than give it to like a charity or something, and then the charity uses the money to, I don't know, buy cocaine and big speedboats and says it gives it. A true story here as well, just real quick. Someone was sponsoring one of those $1-a-day kids from Africa, and then they got a letter saying that the kid was no longer in the zone and just got a new photo of a new kid. So either the kid got kicked out of the $1-a-day Africa club, either the kid was dead, or they just substituted him for another kid. So you just don't know who to trust in these kinds of situations. Yeah, so that was great. Oh, and the other thing as well, Casper, big celebrations here in Melbourne is Melbourne United. Look at this right here. Wins at the NBL title down here, which is the local basketball league. For those wondering, of course, it's not the NBA, but there are a few ex-NBA players, not the high. You don't have LeBron James playing on there, but not the highest level players. But on there, they won the championship. A friend of the program, actually, Dean Vickerman, is the head coach for the club. So big congratulations to all those guys. For people wondering, they actually played the OKC Thunder in a exhibition game earlier on in the season and only lost by 1 point. So that is kind of like a good case scenario for Max Holloway here. If he fights Khabib, look, I'm connecting things here. If he fights Khabib and it's a close fight, that's a win. That was a win for Melbourne United. Next year, USA are coming down to Melbourne, and I think in around September to play in front of around 60,000 people. UFC 193 took place against Australia. So let's just say the basketball rivalry is well and alive here in Australia. Some big matchups coming up, and Melbourne United looking great. 11,000, 12,000 people there. NBL, more alive than ever, so go support those guys. But yeah, A lot of fun stuff happening, Cass. So it's been a great time here, and look, really enjoying this video thing. It's only been a couple of minutes now, Cass, but it is a lot of fun to be able to show people things that are going on. Behind me, I got some stuff. As you can see, the Power Ranger t-shirt is strong. That's actually a purchase from Walmart that we made when we were down for UFC 214 in Anaheim. Casper, you got some colorful t-shirts as well, hopefully. I don't want to spoil anything, but hopefully we can see some of those coming up as well.
Yeah.
So that's right. It's kind of cool because we're able to give you guys a bit of a preview of our facial expressions, what's going on in our lives, and sort of have a few little things in the background, bring up a few props. So it should be exciting in the days coming up. But Cass, you mentioned it. We have a great lineup, some great people coming up. They're on the line. Before we go to that, just a quick reminder, follow us on social media. There's some fun videos on Facebook, facebook.com/submissionradioAUS. And, of course, subscribe to us on YouTube. Now that we've got this video stuff going on, subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/submissionradioAU. Follow us on Twitter. Our DMs are open, and we love chatting to you guys. Been getting a few messages here and there, so we love chatting to you guys. Shoot us a message. Let us know what you think of the show. We love chatting to fellow fans who enjoy listening to Submission Radio and enjoy what's happening in the crazy world of MMA. But Cass, we've got our guest on the line, and Casper, you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys. Our next guest is one of our favorites to chat to. You, of course, know him from his excellent coverage on MMA Junkie and, of course, the MMA Roadshow. No cape. Instead, his superhero outfit is just a patented blue polo and a frosty beverage. He is the machine that never stops. Look at that, a frosty beverage right there. One of the hardest working men in all of MMA. John Morgan, welcome back to the program. How are you? And by the way, what was that drink for those wondering?
This is a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Awesome.
Love it. And thanks for joining us. I mean, a huge treat for us to have you on video. We've spoken to you 100 times before, but every time it gets a little bit more special. And I think the video really adds a little bit of spice and a slice of nice to this chat. So, John, we know a lot of people want to know what's going on in the life of John Morgan. Before we jump into the UFC 223 chat, tell us, how was your flight to New York? And were you able to take advantage of some cocktails along the way?
It was nice. Yeah, we just got settled in Brooklyn. The flight was good. We got upgraded, which was nice. Myself and Mr. Cold Coffee himself, Ken Hathaway. We were sitting in first class, so we were treated well, and we were able to run them out of Woodford Reserve bourbon on the way here.
Very nice. First class must be nice. You know, whenever we fly to the States, we ask them, like, any chance of first class? And they look at us and they're like, for you guys, absolutely not.
They downgrade us.
Yeah, they put us in the cabins with the luggage.
Listen, I always say the only advantage to all the travel I do is that, you know, the airlines, American Airlines, are the only people in the world that call me Mr. Morgan, so it's kind of nice.
All right, well, we're not going to start doing that anytime soon, don't you worry. This must have been a really interesting week for you. Obviously, as you're getting ready, doing your last-minute preparations to cover Tony versus Khabib, the world seemingly fell apart, as did the fight once again, and on April Fool's, no less. How did you find out the news, and how long did it take you to sort of find out, you know, and realize that it wasn't an April Fool's prank? Because, you know, a lot of people, fighters and everybody else, it's one thing for them to find out, but when your job is, you know, one of the most best and most respected media outlets like yourself at MMA Junkie, you need to be extra careful before you put this story out. What was your reaction?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say I hate April Fool's Day. It's the worst.
It's so
every
bad.
year. Especially in the MMA world, you know, it's funny. You know, those internet memes that have been going around have been great, where it's like, you know, April 1st, the one day out of the year where you read something on the internet and stop and wonder if it's actually true or not, you know, which I think is the truth. It's so fantastic. But yeah, I hate April Fools, and I definitely don't take part in those like fake news stories or whatever. But yeah, I found out the same way as everybody else. I mean, I was working Sunday night and, you know, was kind of taking it low key. I mean, I'm actually doing Brooklyn, I'm doing Phoenix, I'm doing Atlantic City as well. So I've got the next 3 weeks kind of on the road. So was just kind of low key hanging out with my wife and kid, and you know, kind of saw the report started circling around. And the first thing I did was, you know, it's funny. I mean, I'm texting UFC officials, I'm texting camps, texting everybody I can. You know, I always hate bothering people on a Sunday. But you got to verify it. You know what I mean? Even the fact it's funny. Even the fact that Dana White, had a video on UFC. I felt like I needed to verify it by third party. So definitely it was crazy. Getting that done, and it was a shot to the gut, man. I mean, this is a fight that I feel like we've all been looking forward to for so long, and it's just awesome that Max Holloway stepped in. I mean, you can't sing his praises highly enough for being willing to do this. But it just sucks, man. I feel like this fight with Tony Ferguson, Khabib Nurmagomedov, is one that we've been looking forward to for so long.
Yeah, it's crazy. And what do you think it kind of does for Tony Ferguson's opportunity to fight Khabib? I mean, do you think the UFC puts this fight together for a possible 5th time, or do you think this ship has sailed for the foreseeable future here?
I mean, listen, I think Dana came out and said, we'll never do it again. I think he told Brett Okamoto that. But,
he did.
Dana says things. He's emotional, right? I mean, that's your instant reaction. I don't want to say it's a joke, but that's the way you're feeling at the time. Do I think that they'll rush to do it again? No, it just feels like it's cursed at this point. It feels like no matter what you do, they're like these two guys are not supposed to fight. But I don't think that in the long term that it really, forever precludes this from happening because – depending on how things play out, I mean, these two guys are both going to be around a few more years. So, should their paths have to cross again, I think the UFC will do it if their hand is forced. I just don't think they'll go out of their way to do it.
I hope their hand is forced, absolutely, because I'm not alone here, and I'm sure you're on the same boat. We all want to see this fight, and the thing is, what happened with Tony Ferguson could have happened regardless of who he was fighting, whether he was fighting McGregor or Holloway, or same thing could have happened to Khabib. I mean, at the end of the day, fighters are going to get injured. That's just what's going to happen. You have to keep making fights. So I think there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't make this fight in the future. I don't believe in curses or any of that crap. 5th time's a charm. That's the saying, right? But
Bro, you don't believe in curses? The man tripped. I mean, think about what this dude does on a daily basis to get ready for this fight. And he tripped over a cord and blew out his knee, and you don't believe in curses?
I think it's more because he's used to throwing elbows at bags and doing all that kind of stuff, but he's not used to tripping cords. This is just, a new tool that he's
become a part of his training.
Yeah, he's got to be drilling like cord tripping defense. Do you think it was the right decision though for the UFC to put Max Holloway in there? And I'm not sitting here saying it was the wrong one. Obviously, he's a fan, and the fight itself is an excellent matchup. But just, I guess, if you were in, maybe, I guess if you're in this, if you were in the UFC, you'd probably do the same thing. Business-wise, do you think it makes sense? Was it the right call?
So here's what's interesting. So they say the announcement right away, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. There's problems, of course, right? I mean, Max Holloway, short notice. We know he was hurt and recovering. I mean, there's all these little asterisks with it, right? But I thought, well, hell, Max Holloway's a stud for stepping up. But it's funny because late that night, I was talking to some people that are part of Brian Ortega's camp, and I wanted to get his reaction. I wanted to kind of speak to him and see what his thoughts were because this has a significant impact on his career as well, and really just wanted to get his reaction and what his thoughts were. And I found out, hey, by the way, we accepted that fight too. And of course, then he tweeted it the next day. I was trying to get him on the phone and get an interview to get that on record because I kind of heard it off record. But when I heard that, I thought, oh, man, like, what an amazing fight that would have been, right? I mean, stylistically, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Brian Ortega.
The ground
top
game.
Bottom game, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. I mean, dude, stylistically, that just gets me hyped.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. If it's a business and we're trying to sell pay-per-views, it's probably Max Holloway, right? I mean, that's the more recognizable name. That's the champion. You have the gold there. So, yeah, man, from the UFC's perspective, it's probably the right decision. It's a little worrisome, man. I mean, we don't know how healthy Max is. We don't know all the problems. He's moving up a weight class, stepping up on short notice, recovering from an injury. There's all those asterisks. So it's probably the right business move. But when I heard that Ortega was willing to take the fight, I'm not going to lie, I think I would have liked that fight stylistically a lot more.
Yeah. George Lockhart was on, I believe it was the MMA Hour the other day, and he was sort of speaking about some of the preparations. Is there anything that you find concerning? You mentioned, like, it just seems like Max Holloway, true gamer, right? Just going out there, I'll fight anyone, anytime. You kind of get the sense that it's not as risky for him because he's going up in weight. No one really expects him to win. But look, he's coming off the ankle injury. He needs his footwork. He's got that ankle injury. I mean, it almost seemed like he wouldn't even be medically cleared. George Lockhart basically said that these next few days, it's not going to be about preparation. Obviously, there's going to be no fight prep or, anything to really get him ready. It's just all about the weight cut. He's going to be on a keto diet, so he's not going to be having any carbs. So you got to think he's probably going to be possibly even weaker and have less endurance than usual. Is there anything that you sort of find, concerning about that? And does that to you sort of reveal why Max Holloway is taking this fight? I'm not saying he's going in there without the intention to win. Of course he's going to try and win, but this is almost like an opportunity to, I guess, get some extra money. And, who knows? If he beats him, obviously it'd be a huge deal for him as well.
Yeah, I mean, all those things are concerning, to be honest with you. I mean, you get it. I mean, I don't want to say it's a free pass for Max Holloway, but, if he loses, I mean, all the cards were stacked against him, right? So if he loses, I don't think anybody hates on him for it. And if he wins, oh, my God. I mean, can you imagine not only, he says this is how legends are made. Yeah, absolutely, dude. You came in on a week's notice, moved up a weight class, and beat the guy that nobody wants to fight. Hell yeah, you're a legend. And then let's extrapolate that forward. What does that mean when you're now the reigning featherweight and lightweight champion of the world? Doesn't that sound awfully familiar to another guy that's out there who might be willing to rematch you? I mean, can you imagine the hype of the rematch between Holloway and Conor McGregor where Max is like, hey, bro, you had 2 belts. I have 2 belts. How about that? Let's do this. I mean, there's a lot of upside. I mean, there is a lot of upside for Max. But, I mean, if you're breaking it down, I mean, the positives. I mean, I guess the only positive is like, Tony Ferguson, the only thing that really scared me about Tony is he's so willing to go to his back because he's so good off of his back, right? But, man, you get underneath Khabib Nurmagomedov, like, I think you just wait for the bell until you get back up, So that could have been problematic. Max is not going to be willing to go to his back, so he's going to just try like hell to stay up on his feet. It's going to be takedown defense, takedown defense, takedown defense. But as you said, the movement might be an issue there. I mean, I guess you could say, like, if you're looking for positives, you got to think if you're getting ready for Khabib Nurmagomedov, you're probably drilling wrestling all day, every day, right? I mean, that's all you're doing is defending takedowns, which we know is grinding on your body. So, after a full 6-8 week training camp, maybe you'd be beat up a little bit because you've just been grinding every day. Maybe by taking it on a week's notice and not thinking about it, not worrying about it, maybe your body's a little fresher than it would be had you been grinding like that.
The Michael Bisping approach.
Exactly, right? I mean, you're kind of grasping at straws to say that, but you remember he did say, he was like, I kind of actually felt better, I was healthier. So, I mean, I guess you could say, but listen, man, this is a tall order for Max Holloway, and that's why he deserves all the props in the world. I mean, you could say it's a free pass, but even if it's a free pass for your reputation, it's not a free pass for your body. It's not a free pass for your face. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting taken down and punched in the face on the canvas. So, man, Max Holloway deserves all the credit in the world for doing this. But, man, I feel like it's a tall order.
I'm interested to find out how this all plays out. But, I mean, you mentioned it, Conor McGregor. We're interested to see if he's going to be there during the event. Do you have any news, John? Have you heard anything else? Do you know if 100% Conor McGregor will be there? And if he is there, what are you expecting from the Conor McGregor show? Because we know Artem's going to be fighting earlier on. So that's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be a third corner going on there, if there's going to be any issues around that. And then, obviously, for the main event, I'm expecting if McGregor is there, he'll be jumping around, yelling things from cage side. It should be a very interesting perspective for fans who are going to tune in live.
I have not heard anything definitive, and I think people are kind of hesitant to be definitive. I mean, who knows? I mean, with Conor, he may make the decision last minute. It's not like he can't jump on a private jet and get here if he wants. We're on the East Coast, so it's a little bit shorter of a flight, but you have to think he's going to be here. There's too many reasons. I mean, he came to Gdansk. I know it's a short flight, but it's a small city to watch Artem fight. I mean, you think he doesn't want to come to New York with some fantastic restaurants and fantastic shopping? I mean, I'm sure he'd like to be here. So just to support his buddy. And then when you add in the fact that, his title basically is on the line, you don't think he wants to make his presence felt and make his presence known and, maybe even give a quote or two that, this belt that they're saying is a belt isn't real. I mean, I got to believe that he's going to be here.
Nate Diaz, I don't think it's a coincidence that he's been a little bit more active on Twitter recently. And here's the thing, like, what if Conor McGregor, we can talk about maybe him versus Khabib or him versus Holloway, but what if he does take the GSP route? Where does that leave Nate Diaz? Does that leave an opening for him potentially? Him talking about returning in May or June?
In a title fight?
Yeah. You say that like it's crazy, like the UFC wouldn't just put him in a title fight. I mean, this is the UFC of 2018. You don't think that's a possibility?
No, I'm not saying it's not a possibility. It's definitely a possibility. You're absolutely right. I mean, big fights have to be made, but if it's against Conor, absolutely. But I don't know, man. Does Nate stepping into a title fight right now? I don't know. Anything could happen. who knows? Let's be honest, man. CM Punk is going to fight in a couple of months. I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah, it's a crazy world in this MMA world that we're in right now. Who knows what's going to happen with CM Punk as well? I've heard some rumors, people thinking maybe he even makes a surprise return in WrestleMania this weekend. We'll see what happens. But anyway, let's talk about the card because there's some really, really fun fights to look at as well. Let's talk about the fight between Rose and Joanna, John. What kind of vibes have you been getting from both competitors going into this fight? We know Joanna's experienced her first loss, her first knockout loss. It's sort of a different wrinkle for her, something else to look at. She fired her nutrition team. How are you sort of looking at her at this moment? What does she look like to you as she's coming into UFC 223?
I am so pumped for this fight. I got to be honest with you. I mean, even had the main event stayed as it was, I think there's almost as much intrigue and emotion and mystery in this co-main event as there is in the main event. I mean, the history between these two, it's crazy. I mean, we just saw it. It wasn't that long ago, right? We're talking about 4 or 5 months ago. So, you saw Rose go out there and just dominate Joanna. And so it's hard to not think that would happen again. But at the same time, I mean, it's crazy because we know that the weight cut was a problem. We know there were issues. Now, is that an excuse? Is that a reason? Is it a factor? I don't know. Would it have changed anything? I don't know. We don't know that. But then the other thing I keep going back to as well is, even with Rose winning, I mean, nobody had Rose winning by that way. I mean, I think we all felt she was a live underdog, but I think we all felt she was a live underdog because maybe she'd get on the back in a scramble, and be able to get a choke in or something like that, and not go out there and just dominate. So, I feel like Rose won in a way that didn't even really play to what I would consider her strengths. So there's still more wrinkles for her there. So I'm pumped up. I don't know. Just seeing the interaction between them this week I think is going to be intriguing. Watching every step along the way. How do they act around each other? I'm pumped up for this fight. I think both women seem to be in good form. Both women seem to be in good spirits, and I think this is going to be one hell of a fight.
Do you think whether, because a lot of people talked about the mind games in the first one where Rose just really didn't bite. Do you think we're going to see the same Joanna, trying to sort of, I guess, big brother or big sister Rose in this one? Or do you think that might be a detrimental approach? Or do you think it really has nothing to do with anything and it won't affect the fight regardless?
No, you know what? I do think that those things mean something, man. This game is physical, but this game is so mental, man. Just getting somebody off. I hate when people say somebody's scared, like that's not true. None of these people, men or women, are scared of anybody they're facing. I mean, this is what they do for a living. But man, this game is all about self-belief, self-doubt, the demons within, all those things. You know what I mean? And if you can get in somebody's head just a little bit, just get them off their game just a little bit. So yeah, I think the mental game does play something into it. I'm interested to see how it all plays out as well because it didn't work the first time around for Joanna, right? I mean, to go out there and try to do that again. I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean, how do you do that again? I mean, you can't go out there and try to big brother / big sister, somebody. You can't do that when they laid you out last time out, Yeah. You were looking up at the camp. So I don't think you can do that. So I'm interested. I'm interested to see how it all plays out, to see the intensity between the two. I think that's what is so intriguing about this is how, because you had this unbeatable, undefeated type facade, and now that's all gone. You know what I mean? So I'm intrigued by it.
Conor McGregor's texting you while we're doing this interview, of course. Third, no worries at all. Third from the top, and this is another fight that's really, really completely overshadowed, but this is an important one. You got Renato Moicano versus Calvin Kattar. They're not big names. Moicano, though, he's 11-1-1. He's only lost to Brian Ortega, and he holds a win over Jeremy Stevens. And Calvin is riding a 10-fight win streak and coming off an incredible win at UFC 220. What do you think of the matchup? Is this a pretty important fight for the featherweight division as far as sort of big prospects down the line?
I definitely think so. I mean, this is two guys, as you said, that aren't big names but do matter in the division. And so I think one of them is going to be able to use this platform to kind of get their name known for the first time. It won't be the signature win, but it'll be like, hey, remember so and so? I saw that guy win that night. That guy stuck in my head. So I think the platform itself is big. Both these guys are talented. They've both been impressive in their UFC runs thus far. They've kind of had some surprising results along the way. And I do think that this is an important matchup. I don't think this is going to be a necessarily a star-making performance for either one of them. I don't think it's necessarily going to be, now that guy's the number one contender or anything like that. But I just think this card, the massiveness of this card, and I think the amount of attention it's going to get, there's just going to be a lot of eyeballs on these guys, and one of them is going to be able to pick up a win, and I think be able to use that to gain some momentum in their career.
Speaking of momentum, though, what about this Michael Chiesa Anthony Pettis fight? Because this looks like a great opportunity for Chiesa to come in, get a big win, sort of wipe out the bitter taste of the Kevin Lee loss out of people's minds, and set himself in a very nice position over a guy with a big name value. And for Anthony Pettis, I suppose this is his chance to show that, hey, I'm still here. And even though I was in a Wheaties box a few years ago, there's a chance I can be on a box of cornflakes down the line if I can get a few wins back to back. What do you think of this fight, John, and what's on the line here?
What does that even mean?
Cornflakes is good.
John Morgan no selling.
You make your way back to the cornflakes. He started the Wheaties. You make your way to the cornflakes. It's got the rooster, I think. It's a lot healthier. I think it's like when you're younger in your life, John, you start on Wheaties. But as you mature through your life and you get a bit older, you end up on the cornflakes and eventually on the old brand one, because it's good for digestion.
Some Mucilix or something like that. No, listen. It is a big fight, man. It's intriguing, right? I mean, Anthony Pettis. I mean, you can't call him a bust, right? I mean, this guy's a former champ. But there was a time, like you said, the Wheaties box fame. I mean, this guy was like the biggest superstar in the sport. It's so tough, man. It's so great. And I've said this from the beginning. Like, I feel like the Showtime kick was like the worst thing that ever happened to Anthony Pettis, because now all of a sudden he's got to be the ninja jumping off walls and doing all that stuff. Where, to be honest with you, I think his jiu-jitsu game is phenomenal, man. I feel like if he didn't feel the need to be that kind of flashy striker sometimes, I think he'd be even better. But listen, this is a big kind of crossroads fight for him, man. Chiesa's the real deal, no question about it. The Kevin Lee loss was a big setback. It's one that left a sour taste in his mouth. He definitely wants to be a UFC champion. I think this is a big fight for both these guys. I'm super excited about it. This is ridiculous. Like, literally, this card, normally, like most cards, there's like a couple fights where, if we're being honest, you're like, yeah, okay, that fight's happening. I don't think there's any fight like that. I mean, like, we could literally sit here and go all the way down, and I could tell you, I'm pumped for that one, I'm pumped for that one, I'm pumped for that one, and it sounds like you're just making stuff up. But literally, like, every fight on here is great. This is an incredibly meaningful fight in the lightweight division.
Well, how about this? As we let you go, we get a few quick predictions. For all the punters, for everybody watching, thinking, John Morgan, he's a guy who knows a lot. He's an OG in this game. Maybe we'll use him to make money. Maybe we'll use his insights to put some bets down. So we'll start from the top. Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Max Holloway. Actually, you know what? What am I talking about? We shouldn't start at the top. We'll start at the bottom. We'll work our way back up. Al Iaquinta versus Paul Felder. Who are you leaning towards in that one?
I'm leaning towards Paul Felder, man. I think he's just a big, powerful guy, and I like Iaquinta a lot, but I'm leaning towards Paul Felder.
And just quickly, if Al Iaquinta can win, he's quietly putting together quite a win streak. Do you think if he wins, even though his tumultuous relationship with the UFC, he could maybe become a contender somewhere down the line, and this kind of sets him up for big fights? You're not really buying it?
I wouldn't say that. It's just, like you said, the relationship with the UFC is tough. I don't think they're necessarily going to go out of their way to push them. And I mean, listen, at the end of the day, fighters are outspoken. They're going to say what they say. But, I mean, I don't think he's, quote unquote, the company guy. You know what I mean? So I think, like, he's going to have to leave no stone unturned on his way to the top, because I think they're going to put as many barriers in front of him as they can. Yeah,
that's fair enough. Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis. What's the official pick? Who are you leaning towards in that one?
I'm leaning towards Chiesa in that one. I mean, Anthony Pettis is as good as they come when he's on. When he is on, he's dangerous. But Chiesa seems driven right now, man. He is not a happy man after that last result. And I'm going with Chiesa here.
Yeah, there are two guys with chips on their shoulders. I feel like Chiesa's is slightly bigger. Renato Moicano versus Calvin Kattar. What about that one? Who do you have going over in that one?
I like Kattar in that one. I think Moicano has kind of played with fire a couple times along the way. I like Kattar. He seems to really be peaking right now.
The big rematch, Rose Namajunas, Joanna Jedrzejczyk. Who have you got in that one?
Man, I'm so torn on this, but right now I'm leaning towards Namajunas. And like I said, I mean, the biggest thing to me is that, the way she won that first fight isn't even the way I thought she had a chance to win. So I think she still has tricks up her sleeve, that we haven't seen yet. And that's why I'm going to go with her in the rematch. But, dude, if Joanna comes back in form, I mean, you can't erase everything that she accomplished before that fight.
Yeah, this is a really highly anticipated fight. And, of course, the big one, we're coming full circle, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Max Holloway. Are you daring enough to pick Max Holloway in this one? Or are you, I mean, I think we're all kind of going with Khabib here, right?
Too
many factors against Max.
You have to, man. Of course, everybody loves Max Holloway. What an amazing story it would be. But to me, if you're being honest, if you're really breaking things down and you're being honest, like, everything leans towards Khabib. To say that of course Max can win. He's an incredible fighter. That's the thing we love about MMA is anything can happen, right? So of course he can win. But if you're really breaking it down, if you're really looking at me, everything leans towards Khabib right now. So yeah, I got to go with Khabib.
Well, it's going to be exciting times, UFC 223. Guys, make sure to follow John on Twitter at MMA Junkie John. And, of course, the show that you have to listen to, the MMA Roadshow with Cold Coffee. So many great moments. They get surprise guests, the highlights from the week. It's just great banter all around. Make sure to follow them on Twitter. Make sure to check it out. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening at UFC 223. Fight Week and, of course, MMA Junkie, the place to go for the MMA news. John, thank you very much for sharing a cruise with us, sir. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And say hi to Cold Coffee for us. We miss his sexy face.
Will do. Thanhanks, guys.
Hey, guys. It's Stipe Miocic, UFC heavyweight champion, and you listen to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. It's been a little while since we've had our last guest on the show. You know him from his amazing work on MMA fighting and being a pioneer in the pro wrestling industry with, of course, his iconic Wrestling Observer newsletter. It is a pleasure to welcome Dave Meltzer back to the show. Dave, welcome to the program. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Great. And Dave, thank you for joining us on the program. It's great to have you. There's some exciting pay-per-views around the corner. But before we even get to those pay-per-views, I want to quickly touch on Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker from this past weekend. A big boxing match. Obviously, Joshua's name sort of surrounded with possibilities of going to the UFC and being signed to Zuffa Boxing. What did you think of the match if you watched it? And where do you think Joshua sort of ranks when it comes to pay-per-view draws? Do you believe that his star is slowly rising?
I mean, he's a giant pay-per-view draw in the UK. In the United States, he's really not. He doesn't even his fights aren't even on pay-per-view; they're on Showtime. And the fight, this one, I think did like 363,000 viewers, which is really low. Some number in that range. I don't remember the exact number, but it was the number. It surprised me how low it did. It was also out of prime time, which hurt price significantly. But I watched it. Everything was great until the fight. I mean, you see a show and you see 78,000 people, and the atmosphere and everything like that. And it just seems like the coolest place in the world to be. But I've seen good Joshua fights, and this just wasn't one of them. It was a pretty boring fight, and when it was over, it was kind of like, oh, okay, there wasn't much to this one.
Yeah, there's a bit of criticism about it. Just quickly on Joshua, I mean, we saw the figures that apparently the UFC would possibly throw out to sign him. Can you kind of explain that? Why is the figure so high, and whereabouts would they make that money back? Would it be purely through boxing pay-per-view buys? I mean, it looks like it's in the hundreds of millions, the figure they would cost to get Joshua signed.
The figure was crazy. I have no idea how they would make it back because he's not that big of a pay-per-view draw in the United States. I don't know. Maybe they're just, gung-ho to make a, to make a footprint and overspend for one guy to get the publicity and to start building, the company around the one guy. I mean, it's crazy numbers though. Yeah.
Wow. What a guy to start off with if they're going to get Anthony Joshua and sort of go all out with hundreds of $1 million check just to get that guy and hopefully interest people. But Dave, there's a lot to speak about, so we obviously got to talk about UFC 223, which is only a few days away. Tell us, what have you made of this Khabib Ferguson fight falling out in the last second and, for the fourth time, no less?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because on paper it was such a great fight. People have been looking forward to it 3 times already. It was the 4th time. So when I first saw it, of course it was on Sunday. So, my immediate reaction is just like, oh, this is another dumb April Fool's joke.
Yeah.
And then, but then, like, I saw that my friends at MMA Fighting who would not do an April Fool's joke like this. There's no way.
That's where I went as well.
I saw, that they were working on the story. It's like, oh my God, he really, something really happened. Because, it sounds so ridiculous. He tripped, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He tripped and he's out of the fight. Because everybody's been joking about, somebody being out of that fight, and then it actually really happened. But then, Max Holloway. Max Holloway is a phenomenal replacement. It's a very intriguing fight. I think it's the best you can do under the circumstances with little notice. And I think the odds are greatly against Holloway. He hasn't had a camp, which is the key. He's coming off of an injury, which is a broken ankle. That's like a real serious injury to come back in 2 months.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be in his best shape. He's going to have to crash diet to make weight. He's got all these things going against him. where Khabib is got to be the favorite. That said, he does have a skill set where, especially early, I think he's got a shot to win if he can just light him up early and do that. And if he wins, it's life-changing because he'll be a superstar for winning. He'll be, have 2 belts, which nobody except for Conor McGregor has ever had. And it'll be natural for him to be the next opponent for Conor McGregor. That becomes a natural fight that is the big money fight. And then he's going to make, once you're in that match with Conor McGregor, then you're making really big money. And win, lose, or draw, if you're in that big of a promotion, it usually helps you long run in your career. So it's a career-making opportunity for him. And if he loses, it's a risk, yeah. But if he loses, he's still featherweight champion. So it's not like he loses, it's not like he loses everything. It's not like a guy in a championship match who, if he loses his title. You take a fight, like if you're a champion, you take a fight on 6 days as champion. Normally I would say that's insane, but since his title's not at stake, his risk reward ratios actually, there's a lot more reward than risk, but the odds are against him in the reward.
I think, and Dennis was saying this a little bit earlier, it's got a bit of a pro wrestling feel to it, like Max Holloway coming out, trying to get the 2 belts and then moving closer to that Conor McGregor fight. But what do you think is better for business, Dave? Max Holloway winning or Khabib winning? Because we know, obviously, Khabib, he's been talked about as sort of holding the keys to the Russian market, which I'm still not convinced is really that great for the UFC, given that they're not a pay-per-view market.
How lucrative is that market, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how lucrative that market is. Still, I don't think there's a big difference because I do think that Khabib has a certain intangible that makes him a superstar. But I also think that Max Holloway has the same intangible in the sense that they're both guys who, like the hardcore fans know that they're both great. They're 2 of the best fighters on the entire roster. And they have some charisma. But they need that little push over the top like Nate Diaz got and Nick Diaz got and people like that. They need that little thing. And this fight and a Conor McGregor fight would be more than either of them would need, and it wouldn't matter which one. But yeah, I think I guess so. If you're going to say like which is better for UFC, I'm going to say it's Khabib winning because Holloway's 26 years old. He'll still be the featherweight champion, and I think he may be a very dominant featherweight champion, and he'll be able to make it even with a loss. Like a loss won't hurt him too much. No one expects him to win, so I don't think a loss hurts him. Whereas a loss, if Khabib loses, it's a big loss. It will hurt him.
And I guess the big question is as well, how many pay-per-views do you think UFC 223 was sort of on the way to getting with Tony Ferguson and then having that matchup with it being cancelled 3 times beforehand? And how much pay-per-view buys do you think it's going to get now with Max Holloway replacing Ferguson? Because I feel like there's more sort of coverage from sports outlets. A lot of people are sort of shocked, saddened, but now kind of excited by the news. Do you think there's a chance that this Max Holloway fight outdraws the original Ferguson-Khabib fight?
There was so much publicity in the last 2 days that I think it's probably along the same lines, but maybe slightly ahead with Holloway just because of the late publicity. But I think that the last 3 days that Ferguson and Khabib, just because of their dynamic, would have gotten people pretty excited. I know that there were people in cable and UFC that were actually expecting this to do really, really well, and they still are. So, but it's uncharted water because it's not people who, none of the 3 have histories as pay-per-view draws, but it did feel like, among hardcore MMA fans, I felt to me like Ferguson and Khabib was like the biggest fight in a long, long time. Obviously Bisping and GSP was going to do far, far better, but this one had a real intrigue, and Tony Ferguson's fights are always great, so that's good. And he's never say die. Like the thing with Khabib is like with Barboza, he just like broke him down, mentally, and Michael Johnson too. And I think that maybe Ferguson's like the one guy who I've seen in bad shape in a fight, and he just never wavers and he comes back. So you have to finish the fight to finish Ferguson. You can't, like if you beat him up but he's still living, he's still going to fight you till the end. Holloway, I don't know, because Holloway's been dominant in all his fights, so you just don't really know. The last time Holloway lost was he was 21 years old. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, he was on his way up. I mean, ever since he was, you know, 22, nobody's touched him. So I don't know what it's like when he's going to be underneath that ground and pound. If he gets underneath that ground and pound, I don't know how Holloway reacts to that.
And you mentioned how the UFC is sort of expecting big numbers from this thing. What numbers are you expecting from it? What kind of range do you sort of think would be a good result for this pay-per-view after everything's said and done?
Okay, so to me, anything over 350 is good, but I know that people in UFC are expecting way over that because I've had people throw numbers at me that are, you know, pretty significant. But you know, right now,
just out of curiosity,
the,
what numbers are they expecting roughly? Do you know?
Over 5.
Oh wow!
So
high hopes.
Which it sounded high, but you know, I mean, and it, you know, Joanna and Rose Namajunas, Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Rose Namajunas, that is a strong number 2, especially because I think people, you know, Joanna had that invincibility thing and then got beat. Now she's coming back, I think there is intrigue in that fight because it's like, did Joanna have a bad day? Because everyone has bad days. Or is Joanna not nearly as good as we all thought? And this fight's going to answer that question.
Yeah, well, I think that's a big reason why a lot of people are looking forward to that one. We also see, obviously, Nate Diaz. He's tweeting a little bit more than usual. It kind of seems like his star is dwindling just a little bit, you know, with him and Conor being out of the discussion as far as the next fight goes and things kind of moving on without him a little bit. You know, where does this all leave him? And, you know, if you were Diaz, what would your next move be? And how do you think this fight kind of affects him? Because he was talking about returning possibly in May or June. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't pick July, International Fight Week. Do you think he's in the mix in any way?
Well, he's in the mix because all those guys would want to fight him. Because I think that, number one, they think he's a big name. He hasn't fought a lot, so he's probably rusty, and he can be a money fighter, a money opponent. But even if it's not a big money opponent, it's a great win to have right now. So I think everyone in 2 divisions, you know, would probably line up to fight Nate. You know, as far as how he should play it, here's the thing. I don't know what his financial situation is. If he's set for life and he doesn't want to fight, then he shouldn't fight. You know, if he really wants to fight and he's got something to prove, then he should get back now because you don't want to squander your prime.
Right, because if he comes back, obviously him versus Holloway would be a great fight. That'd be amazing scrap. Him versus Khabib, that'd be a fun one as well. But if he loses to either of those guys, do you still think the McGregor trilogy fight is on the books? Surely it would be because, you know, if McGregor wants it and there's still interest in it, that would happen down the line, right?
I think that you could still do it and it would still be real big even if he were to lose to either of those guys. Yeah. I mean, I think if he lost like 3 or 4 in a row, no, but one loss, people will forgive the one loss once they start hyping that third rubber match because, you know, the first 2, McGregor and Diaz fights were fantastic, and they're 1-1. So I think that, that fight will be fine as long as people don't think that you know, Diaz is just done completely. I mean, if he got knocked out in the first round, it probably wouldn't help. But if he just got beat by, you know, Khabib, you know, like everyone does, I still think that people would be very happy to see Diaz McGregor. But I do think that at that point, Khabib, if he were to beat, you know, or Holloway, if they were to beat Diaz, I think that would really establish them perhaps as better opponents for Conor. But Conor could still fight Diaz later.
And we want to quickly touch on WrestleMania with you, Dave. But before we do get to that, just speaking of McGregor, I mean, Max Holloway, if he walks in here at UFC 223 and he does this whole storybook thing where he beats Khabib, becomes the champion, you know, now he's got both of Conor McGregor's belts. It sets up a great storyline for them to fight down the track. Do you think if Holloway wins here, he sort of pushes himself to the top spot as to who should fight McGregor next? Or do you think that this GSP fight for a potential 165 belt still trumps everything?
I think the GSP fight, if they could actually put it together, would be the bigger money fight. But it's great to have that option. If it isn't GSP, then whoever wins Khabib and Holloway. I think either one. I think I think all those fights are huge. But I don't think there's anything bigger than GSP and McGregor. Because there's so many dynamics to that one. I mean, because you've got, you know, real national heroes in two different countries, and the big guy against the small guy, but the big guy's older and not maybe not necessarily in his prime anymore. But yeah, I think that that fight would be the biggest fight in UFC history, easily too.
Wow. Well, that was going to be our next question. It would obviously be the biggest fight that you can make now. Would it be the biggest one of all time? What do you think the numbers would be for something like that? I mean, obviously it's hard to say because we're speaking hypotheticals, but if everything aligned perfectly, what do you think? I mean, could it reach 2 million given where McGregor is now?
I think it would be in the 2 million range. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if it would beat 2 million, but I mean, I think that we're looking over, 1.8 easily. I think pretty confident it'd be 1.8, and it could be, well over 2. I mean, Conor did 4.3 with with Floyd, and granted it's Floyd, but Conor's a really big name right now. I mean, I think that him and St. Pierre would just be, especially at the end, because they're both intriguing characters, and they're both opposites, which makes for a good promotion, because you got a talker and you got a polite guy, and there's just so many dynamics of the fight. There's so many questions, because I think that Conor's a much better striker than St. Pierre, but he's also the smaller guy. I think that St. Pierre might just destroy him wrestling, for the whole fight. I mean, that's because he's bigger and he's stronger and he's used to throwing around guys much bigger than Conor. So, you can look at the fight and you don't know how it's going to go. You just don't. I mean, I think McGregor would have a chance in the fight. I think that George would have to be the favorite, though.
It would be very interesting, and I'm curious to find out if they end up using Holloway as a bit of a bargaining chip for George to step up, because if Holloway wins, you'd think it's either that fight or the other fight, in case McGregor loses against Holloway. So I'm wondering if this gets GSP to sort of speed things up a little bit, maybe agree to some of these negotiations a bit quicker. It's going to be very interesting. Now, speaking of WrestleMania, Dave, because that is just around the corner as well. Me and Casper, we don't watch wrestling as much as we once did, but we remember how huge it was around WrestleMania 17 and before that. I'm just curious, when it comes to WrestleMania these days, this one that's happening this weekend, what kind of pay-per-view buys? How many viewers does it get these days?
It's not really a pay-per-view show anymore because it's a network show. They're going to have whatever number it is the network subscribers, will be. I mean, I think it was like 1.661 million at WrestleMania last year, and this year will be higher as far as paid. There'll be a ton of people who are free because they were really pushing free 1 month. So it'll be the most people that network has ever had, and easily. I think that this is a deep card. I think there's a lot of interest in the Ronda Rousey fight, especially with casual sports fans. I think that Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, they've been building for a year, and but there's a lot of undercard stuff. Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles is a great match. Finn Balor and Miz and Seth Rollins. I mean, that may be really great as well. I look at it. I mean, it's going to be too long because it's going to go 7 hours, which for pro wrestling is just too long. But I do think there will be a lot of highlights, and there's going to be 65,000 people there, which with wrestling is something you only get once a year.
Talk to us a little bit about this Ronda Rousey fight, though, because I mean, all the MMA fans, I suppose, they've been tuning into Raw, seeing how she's going with Kurt Angle. How do you sort of rate her performance? Because personally, from our perspective, I mean, we're very, very critical. Her debut when she came out and shook hands with everybody, it kind of, for us, was a little bit of a rocky start. The promo with Kurt Angle, Kurt didn't really seem across it very well. And now they're building to this match. And, when she did pick up Stephanie and dropped her with that Samoan drop or whatever it was, it didn't look too smooth. So how do you rate it? And did it match your expectations? Did it exceed it? Or are you sort of not sold just yet?
I didn't. Pro wrestling is something that it takes a lot of time to learn. So, you have a novice and you stick them on national television. I mean, it takes most people years and years to get ready for that. So she's about what I expected her to be. They have to protect her in every way because she's just not experienced at this, which doesn't mean that she can't be real good at it if she sets her mind to it. She's a good athlete, and she's a great athlete, and she understands it. So that's sort of like the big battle is athletic ability, which, she's going to have more than most. And just the ability to understand it. Her roommate for a while was Shayna Baszler, who doesn't have a lot of experience as a pro wrestler, but is very smart as a pro wrestler and understands watching and everything. So I think Ronda's probably listened, and just through osmosis with her watching Raw with Shayna for all those years, probably has a better understanding of certain aspects of pro wrestling than most people when they first start out, especially the ones that were, like football players and stuff like that weren't, lifelong fans. So, but again, how dedicated is she going to be? She's got other things going on in life. It's not like it's her full-time job like it is for all the other wrestlers there. So, there's so many things that can happen. And again, we haven't seen her in a match. I don't expect that she'll be good from a wrestling standpoint, but that doesn't mean she won't get over and she won't be able to pull it off. I think they're really going to practice it hard. She's in there with someone, Stephanie McMahon, who's not a trained wrestler really. She's smart. Stephanie McMahon knows wrestling, but she's not a wrestler. So you have two novices essentially going against each other at WrestleMania, which is the big show of the year, following all these people that are experienced guys that are having trying to have the match of their lives. So yeah, it's probably going to have some rocky moments. That and the other two, Triple H and Kurt Angle are really good. So they'll probably have them go like 80% and just let have the women go in 10, 15, 20% tops, and have it worked out enough to where at least it's passable. I don't expect it to be good from the women. If it's passable and the men are really good, then I think it'll work out okay.
It's going to be interesting because obviously Kurt Angle, we haven't really seen him work too much. He did the Shield match, but it looked like he was a little bit rusty there as well. Obviously, not much time to prepare for that one. So it's going to be very interesting. But obviously, it kind of looks like Ronda Rousey, and I mean the WWE say it. They've been building it. She's been saying it in interviews that pro wrestling is her thing now. She's looking to be in the company past WrestleMania, almost like a Brock Lesnar, I suppose, performer, where she comes in from time to time and wrestles. Do you think if this match is absolutely terrible and Ronda has a horrible experience and there's a lot of backlash from fans, because we know she can be affected by criticism from time to time, especially if it's hardcore criticism from fans. Do you think there's a chance that perhaps, she cuts it short and we don't actually see her pursue this kind of full-time wrestling ideal that she had initially if this, I suppose, gamble doesn't pay off and it's, I suppose, a lot worse than she anticipates? And also, don't forget that Ronda Rousey is somebody who is very critical of her performances. We know with her losses, she's gotten very emotional when she loses. So even though we're not expecting it, I think she's got some expectations in her head that if they aren't met, maybe it could shorten her run in the WWE. What do you think, Dave?
Anything's possible. Yes, I think that's possible. If it's an absolute terrible performance, and that's possible, she trips in the wrong place, she slips in the wrong place, they bonk heads in the wrong place. That can happen. I mean, that can even happen with good wrestlers.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, but with inexperienced wrestlers, yeah, it can happen, and the people can turn on them. And yeah, it's Ronda Rousey. She doesn't take well to negativity. She may just go, I don't need this. I think that's absolutely possible. I don't, I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't, it's one of those things. Yeah, if everything goes wrong, yeah, it could happen.
We've actually heard some rumors that there's been a little bit of hate from some of the other female wrestlers in the back. Do you know if there's any truth to that, Dave?
Well, it's overblown completely.
Yeah.
But in the sense that when they first, the stuff that they say public, no, that's all fake. Okay, because nobody would have the, in WWE you don't have the gut. You would not second guess management decisions in public, because if you do, the retributions would be hard, and everyone knows it, and that's why they don't. So the fact that people are doing it means that they were told that they could do it. So that's storyline. Are there women who feel that they've worked so hard and resent that she's walking in and going to be a bigger star than they are? Yes, that does exist. But I think that most of them are smart enough to know that the flip side is that because she's there, the women are all going to get treated better than they ever have before, and it's a big plus in the long run for all of them. But if you think like that some of the women that have been there and are really good are not happy that at WrestleMania they're not getting any push at all, and Ronda Rousey may be in the main event and is in the most talked about match. It's human nature, and there is some of that, yeah.
All right, well, Dave, we appreciate your time. And just finally, I mean, it looked like the WWE was after Conor McGregor for a bit. We saw the stuff that happened on social media. That's all died down now. But, if this Ronda Rousey thing works out well, and apparently Fabricio Verdum's talking to the WWE now, so it looks like MMA fighters are more focused on it than ever.
He actually clarified that. He clarified that and actually said it was a Mexican promotion he was talking to.
Okay, so there you go. That's probably good for Brock.
Doesn't really fit. Well, I mean, I can't say he doesn't, because I could actually see, Fabricio, because of his, personality and look and everything. But, WWE starting a guy out who's in his 40s, that's a tough one. He doesn't fit. Like, if they were going to bring in an MMA fighter, they would probably prefer that they be under the age of 30, I think. Unless it's Conor, when Conor's 35, of course they'll take him at any time.
Yeah, and just with Conor on that, as we wrap up, do you think it's likely that we see a surprise from a Conor McGregor running in there? Do you think it even happens? Because it feels like everything's going to die down now, and Conor's moved on to bigger, better things with UFC 223 on the weekend, and obviously he won't be there because he'll be at UFC 223. So do you think it's likely that he'll actually get involved in WrestleMania in the next few years?
I don't think it'll be this year. I think at some point, someday, I do believe he'll be involved in a WrestleMania. But the one thing is that I'm not sure, because of the money thing. Like UFC, I mean, WWE would pay him. I think they would pay him over $1 million to do it. But I don't know that. For him, if he thinks his price should be $5 million, I don't think they would pay him $5 million. So it comes down to it. To me, Conor McGregor doing something at a WrestleMania really comes down to the money, and there might be a big gap because Conor's not easy to. Conor's not going to work cheap. I don't think he's going to. So, and I don't know that Conor has the thing of, I always wanted to do WWE, so I'll do it like as favor, because it's like a childhood goal. I don't sense he is that big of a wrestling fan. I know he is a wrestling fan. But yeah, I still think there's a very good chance that he'll do WrestleMania someday.
Wow. Imagine if that happened. For the meantime, obviously, UFC 223 is this weekend. Guys, don't forget to follow Dave Meltzer on Twitter at Dave Meltzer, WON. You can check out his amazing work on MMA fighting. And, of course, the amazing, and iconic Wrestling Observer newsletter, which Dave has been doing for a very, very long time and is still a very, very high quality. Dave, we could chat to you all day, but for now, we really, really appreciate the time. Stay safe and enjoy the fights this weekend. Thanks for your time.
Okay, great. You guys have a good week, too.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demetrius Johnson, the UFC flyweight champion of the world, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
What's up, fight fans? I'm the scheduled bout that never comes of mixed martial arts, Tommy Toehold, and UFC 223 is almost upon us. Let us hope that the main event is still Max Holloway and Khabib Nurmagomedov by the time Saturday rolls around. Not to worry you, but Khabib still has to make 155, and the guy helping Max with his weight cut says this will tie the biggest cut he's ever had to help a fighter with. But let's not think about that scary shit right now. Right now, let's talk about the 3 things you should be looking out for this Saturday at UFC 223. The first thing is, of course, the historical significance of the main event. Fight fans, if Max Holloway wins this fight Saturday, if he somehow stops the Eagle, he will have beat a fighter on a 25-fight win streak on 6 days' notice in a division he doesn't fight in currently. Khabib Nurmagomedov is walking around way bigger than Max Holloway is. He's a fucking monster. We could see another champ crowned. We could see one of the greatest upsets, one of the greatest moments in the history of our sport. Max Holloway is a fucking legend if he wins this fight. Put that man in the Hall of Fame right then and there. Hand him the belt, hand him a box of Wheaties with his face on it, and then hand him the fucking Hall of Fame plaque. But guys, there's something even bigger looming here if he wins. If he wins, he's the double champ of the same 2 divisions the other double champ, Conor McGregor, is the double champ of. That means no matter what, we're probably going to see the rematch between 2 of the greatest to ever do it. We're going to see these 2 battle it out, hopefully in 2 divisions back to back. We're going to get a fucking fight trilogy for the ages. Unless Conor decides to fight Floyd Mayweather in his debut. Then we might have to wait. But holy fuck, can you feel it, fight fans? The stars are aligning. Max's last loss was to Conor. 2 titans on the top of the sport throwing down in their primes? That is, of course, if Max does the impossible Saturday and wins. Which brings me to the second thing to look out for. If Khabib wins that fight, who in the fuck is going to stop this man? Dana has already made it clear that after 900 attempts, he will never book Khabib to fight Tony again. So let's just pretend that fight doesn't exist. That fight was taken out behind the barn and shot to save us all the heartache. Without Tony and potentially without Conor as he takes super fights and makes $15 billion, then retires and buys the whole sport, who is left to save the lightweight division from Khabib? The Machida era will have truly begun. This Saturday, you might be witnessing the beginning of the longest and most devastating reign in MMA history. You might be seeing the beginning of a damn near decade-long reign. Khabib is 29 years old, and the only thing he gives a fuck about is beating the shit out of people. There is almost nothing left to stop him, and that final piece might fall before our very eyes this Saturday. Holy shit, what a reason to watch UFC 223. But if that's not enough for you, my third thing to look out for this Saturday at UFC 223 is, of course, the rematch between Thug Rose and Joanna Violence. It is fucking gut check time. That first fight was decimation. That first fight didn't feel like an accident either. That felt like John Jones beating Shogun. But the thing is, Joanna is still absolutely prime. There is no reason she shouldn't be the champion of that division for years to come. But there could be a reason, and that reason might be Rose Namajunas. Every fight is different, even rematches of previous bouts, and I cannot fucking wait to see what happens in this one. Was the first fight a one-off? Did everything just fall perfectly into place, and Rose fought the perfect fight on a night that Joanna did not? Or will we see more of the same? It was one of the most shocking events in the history of the sport last time they fought, and that's what's so fucking great about this thing now. No matter what happens Saturday, it's gonna be just as fucking shocking. If Joanna comes out and tears right through Rose, it's gonna be shocking. If Rose gives Joanna another beatdown, it's going to be shocking. If they have an amazing back and forth ending in a draw, it's gonna be fucking shocking. That fight cannot be anything but gold, and I cannot fucking wait to see it. It's going to be a historic night no matter how you look at it, so you better be watching Saturday night, or you're missing out on some of the biggest and most important MMA in the history of MMA. And considering how 2018 has gone so far, it might not get much better. I'm Tommy Toehold. Those are 3 things to look out for. Back to the awesomeness that is Submission Radio. Thank you so much for having me on. See you Saturday, fight fans!
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, the next guest has been doing an absolutely tremendous job making a very well-received splash since becoming an official part of the UFC commentary team. He also provides excellent analysis and insight for Fox, and if you're lucky, you'll catch him hosting a Q&A at your local UFC event. The always lovely Jimmy Smith here to help us preview UFC 223. Jimmy, welcome back to Submission Radio. It's been a while. How you doing?
Doing well. First time I've been called lovely. I just appreciate that, man. Great intro. Thank you so much.
Well, you know, you deserve it, and it's been well overdue. And I mean, before we even talk about the fight this weekend, Jimmy, I mean, you can kind of talk about the Avengers coming together, the Justice League coming together, because it's going to be a huge deal for everybody at home. You and your good friend Joe Rogan are finally going to be doing commentary together. Some people are saying you're the evil Joe Rogan with a goatee. Other people saying it's the bold and the beautiful. There's a sneaky doctor coming in somewhere. Talk to us about that, because, I mean, it's a dream for a lot of people. How do you feel about this situation?
I feel great about it. I mean, the thing to me is when I first joined the UFC, that was something I asked all the time. Like, when are you working with Joe? Or are you meeting 3-man booth with Joe? Or is Joe going to be working together? And, you know, to finally be able to go, yeah, it's going to be UFC 223 April 7th was a big moment for me. You know, that's really cool. So what people don't understand is, like, we talk about MMA all the time anyway. So to be able to do it on air and share that with the audience, that's a big deal. That's awesome.
The interesting thing is, because a lot of people, while they've been saying, you know, Jimmy and Joe being together would be awesome, for a while it kind of wouldn't be possible. Now that it's a 3-man booth, it is, because you obviously need a play-by-play guy. Anik is that guy. Is there anything that needs to be done, sort of, like, how do you make sure that things run smoothly between you and Joe? Because I imagine it'd be like two buddies talking. Is there anything that you need to sort of, I guess, not so much figure out, but is there anything that you need to keep in mind to sort of make sure things run smoothly on the actual night itself?
It's about giving room to John Anik, because I've worked 3-man booths before. They can be challenging because, you know, it's we're explaining what's going on, but we have to give John Anik, this guy got hit, this guy did this guy did that. That's John Anik's role. And so to call every kick and punch isn't our job. Our job is why someone's getting hit, why somebody's getting punched, why they're falling for this technique, what's about to happen. That's different. And so really in a 3-man booth, the 2 color guys are usually okay. It's a matter of leaving enough room for the play-by-play guy, John Anik in this case, to do his job, because he's phenomenal at it.
I mean, we know what it's like to let John Anik do his thing, because we were doing our interview in Perth, and then what happens? Interrupted by John Anik. When he calls, you pick up. And now I'm expecting it to call
it's
right
like
now.
That's a metaphor for what we're doing.
Exactly.
Gotta give him his room.
You always take us calls. That's good to see. It's a good preview of what's going to happen this weekend. Let's talk about this weekend, though, and dive straight into it, because we want to get your reaction on the craziness that's been going on. Tony Ferguson is out. I mean, just the way that it happened, walking through a studio, the whole thing is ridiculous. And then what makes it even more exciting is the fact that Max Holloway is in and will be fighting Khabib. You know, the featherweight champion is in. What was your reaction to this, especially considering, you know, this is going to be your broadcast? You're going to be on this pay-per-view.
Yeah, man, it was surreal. You know, people have this idea that I would have some kind of inside line. I learned like everybody else, you know, off social media, and I was trying to find out if it was real or not. I'm texting Joe, I'm texting John Anik, and you know, Joe was one that told me, he's like, yeah, I talked to Dana, it's legit, like he's out, and you know, that's when I first knew, and it was just, you know, I experienced the same things the fans did. I couldn't believe it, and then I'm trying to adjust to Max Holloway stepping in, who, if you're going to find a name to step in and make an exciting fight that's going to be, you know, huge, and fans are going to be interested in Max Holloway. So they did the best they could with the tools they had provided for them. But yeah, I had the same reaction everybody else did, you know, disbelief.
Yeah, and sort of looking at it from a technical perspective, I mean, Max Holloway, not that unlike Tony Ferguson in the sense that he's a fairly tall guy, he's fairly rangy. If you're Khabib, what adjustments, if any, are you going to make in terms of approaching a fight? I imagine they'd be pretty minimal. You've only got a handful of days. There's not really much you can change in terms of game plan. And it is Khabib. Of course, he's going to do what he always does. But is there anything specific that he has to look out for and be extra careful with when it comes to Max Holloway?
If there's anything that would change around is you wouldn't necessarily sweat the first couple rounds. In that Holloway, A, can be kind of a slow starter a little bit. And B, you're talking to a guy who had 6 days notice. If I can get past round 3, there's a good chance this one's in the bag. So his pacing might be a little different. But strategy-wise, technique-wise, Khabib doesn't care who he's fighting. And when I talked to him this morning, he was like, you know, I don't care. It's Max Holloway, anybody else. I don't worry about what they do. I worry about what I do. He's that kind of guy. So I don't expect any big adjustments. It's, you know, if Max Holloway comes out smoking in round 1, there's that back of your mind idea that, well, I had a full camp and he didn't. So don't worry about it. Move on to the next round. It might be a little bit of that pacing might be a little bit different.
I mean, we've seen some amazing wrestlers in MMA. You know wrestling well. We know wrestling well. But what makes Khabib's takedown so effective? I mean, what makes him such an absolute beast that when he gets anyone down, it's a massive problem? No matter how good your game off your back is, no matter how good your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, you know, you could be a previous wrestler yourself. What is it about the elite level of his takedowns and his grappling that makes Khabib so damn dangerous?
I've been watching this for days, asking myself that question. And, you know, I follow wrestling, NCAAs and Olympics and stuff like that, internationally. And his takedown's not that slick. It's not that different. It is like, wow, he does this crazy knee pick, ankle pick that nobody else does. He's just really tenacious with it. He just, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth attempt, they all look the same. He doesn't go 3 times and go, man, I got to reset and try something else. He's just so doggedly determined with it. And he's a big 55er. He's not gigantic, you know. I mean, it's not like he has some kind of physical ability. He's so explosive, nobody can see it. He doesn't have any of that. It's like he's just so determined once he gets in there that guys, you know, they stop it once, they stop it twice, third time's tough, fourth time, that, you know, by 5 or 6, they're on their butt. And that's what I've been watching him and studying tape. He just goes back to it until you give up.
And on the flip side, you've obviously got Max Holloway, who has, you know, significantly improved his takedown defense over the years. You know, he actually hasn't given up a single takedown since 2014 when he fought Clay Collard. And, you know, he's fought guys like Aldo, Pettis, Lamas, Jeremy Stevens, Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson, Cole Miller, Akira Korosani. They've all gone 0-27 on their takedown attempts. Shout out to Luke Thomas for that fun stat. I mean, what is Max Holloway? What is it that makes Max Holloway's takedown defense so good, especially compared to what maybe it wasn't in the past?
Well, he's rangy, and so he sets a lot of traps you have to get through to get there. So guys with an outside takedown, you know, they're walking through hands before they get there. He'll sting you before you're able to really get in range and do your thing because he's tall and he's rangy, he throws a lot, he's more boxing oriented, so he doesn't throw a lot of kicks you can catch. Stylistically, he's a tough guy to get in on. And then naturally, of course, the balance and the ability to stop the takedown is one thing, but when a guy can't really get there to set anything up without getting punched in the face and backing off, that's really been his key.
I mean, the big question will be, is Holloway's takedown defense good enough for Khabib's takedowns? And do you think he can stop Khabib? Do you think there's a chance in this fight Khabib doesn't get him down?
There's a chance. It would be tough because of all the names. The one caveat, all those names are great. They're all top-level guys. They're all some of the best in the world. None of them what I call dedicated grapplers. And what I mean by dedicated grapplers is when Ben Askren or Matt Hughes or any of those guys throw a punch, they don't care about the punch. They're trying to take you down. Everything they're doing is to take you down. That's why somebody like, any wrestler you can think of that kind of falls in love with their striking, Josh Koscheck, for example, he stopped being a dedicated grappler. He was trying to knock you out. There's a difference between someone who can wrestle but uses it as a backup or whatever, and a guy that's what they do. Not many of the guys he fought, Max Holloway, that's what they did. That's their whole game plan is take you down. They'll strike a little bit, but it's all to set up the takedown. So it's the consistency of it. It's the persistency of it. That's something that he has to deal with, and he's got to pull off something no one's been able to do, which is stay on their feet against Khabib. Gleison Tebow did the best job, and that's a giant 55er.
Yeah.
That was early in Khabib's career. Yeah.
I almost get the sense that, if because Max Holloway is so rangy, if Khabib can get on him, that sort of takes away a lot of tools as far as Max Holloway's takedown defense. But we have seen Khabib, throw a lot of wild punches as he's coming in. Like you mentioned, he's just going for that takedown. And opponents are so focused on, retreating and going backwards. We saw that in Edson Barbosa and really all of Khabib's fights, that they're not concerned that much with offense. But do you think that when Khabib is in those wild moments, is that a moment where Max Holloway can potentially capitalize? Because he's very, very good at not being hit, Max Holloway is, and he's very, very good at countering as well and finding those small opportunities.
That's what he needs to do. I mean, that's my strategy for Tony Ferguson was he's got to sting Khabib early because Khabib does tend to walk forward, chin very, very high. His hands, aren't defensively always the most sound. They're kind of stiff sometimes. He's been caught on the chin before. Michael Johnson was able to rock him a couple times. And it's one of those things where you have to give this guy a reason to not move forward and stalk you and take you down. You have to give him a reason to do that, especially early in the fight, first couple rounds. Get in his head that he's going to get hurt coming forward. So Holloway has to do that. That was my strategy for Ferguson. That's my strategy for Holloway. Nothing really changes in that regard. He has to take advantage of the times when Khabib is moving forward and isn't concerned about getting punched.
I mean, it could happen. Khabib's in Max Holloway's guard. Holloway, we know, has a lot of skills off his back. We usually know what happens when Khabib gets someone down and ends up on top of them. It's usually a domination from Khabib. But do you see a chance here that, Holloway could possibly pull something off his back or possibly even feel comfortable on his back or even in a situation feel so confident in his grappling skills, seeing as he's the champion and he's been so dominant that he's not afraid to go onto the ground with Khabib and try stuff off his back?
That would be a bad idea, in my opinion. If I was a coach, I would say no. His 2 submission wins in his whole career, and they were both guillotines. We haven't seen a lot of really slick, crazy back stuff from him. We haven't seen outstanding guard from him. He isn't there a whole lot, which is a credit to his takedown defense. But I haven't seen anything where if I'm Khabib's coaches, I go, hey, watch yourself when you're on top. He just hasn't shown that game so far in his career.
Do you think Max sort of goes in there and tries to finish it early? I mean, we've seen the best version of Max. He's happy to go 5 rounds and he has the cardio, but he has so many factors going against him. I mean, and even the fact that you would assume that, if you're gonna beat Khabib, you need footwork, and he's coming off an ankle injury, doesn't really have the full preparation. These next few days are just going to be all about the weight cut. Do you think this is really going to be, the first couple of rounds, and that's, I don't want to say all Max has got, but he's going to be focusing on finishing it there?
Yeah, but the late notice, all these things, I think strategically, tactically, that's where Khabib is most vulnerable. The guys that have had success, even for a second, Michael Johnson is the best example I can think of. Even Kamal Shalarus had some advantages for a minute. It's in those first 2 rounds before he wears you down. Holding up Khabib, his body weight for 2 or 3 rounds, you just don't have anything left. You're not going to snap in rounds 4 and 5 to knock him out. If you're going to catch him and you're going to hurt him, it's going to be early. Khabib's going to be confident. He's going to be moving forward. He hasn't been hit yet, and he leaves his chin out there. So all the factors you're saying are totally correct, but tactically that would be my strategy if he had a full camp and was completely healthy. That would be my strategy. See if you can catch him in those first couple rounds. So tactically, to me, there's no real difference.
Let's talk about mental pressure here, because this is an interesting dynamic. Khabib, it seems like he's been trying to become champion for a really long time. We know what happened. He had to withdraw from that Tony Ferguson fight. Finally, he's here. Now Tony Ferguson is out. Now there's a new opponent. We know he's very, very strong mentally, but who do you think has the more pressure on them? Or you have the Holloway, who in the back of his mind knows, hey, I've got an injury. This is a chance to win my second title. This is my path to fight Conor McGregor. This is the big money situation here. Who has more pressure on them mentally going into this fight, Jimmy?
More pressure on them mentally, I would think, would be Khabib, if I believed he was the kind of guy to have mental pressure, which I don't think he necessarily is. Holloway is in much more the who loses more by losing. If Holloway loses, he's a natural 45er. He's already a champion. He came in late notice. He came in often. I mean, no one's going. His stock won't drop very much. If Khabib loses to a natural 45er, moving up to 55 with 6 days notice, it'll be he was never that good. But you know how it's going to be. You know what the reaction will be. He was never that good in the first place. So in a sense, a loss hurts him a lot more. And when you ask who has more pressure on him, who does a loss hurt more? Khabib. 100,000% a loss hurts him more. But Max Holloway is a champion, and I think that's not getting enough respect. He doesn't like losing. There's a lot of pride. He's been there before. He knows how to win tough fights. He doesn't want to go in there and look like a fool. He doesn't want to get dominated. You don't want to leave blood in the water for everybody else at 145 also. So he's coming with a champion's mentality, and there's a lot behind that, a lot of strength there.
Max Holloway, hypothetically, with both of Conor McGregor's former belts, Khabib, there's been a lot of history there. Are you expecting Conor McGregor to potentially fight, the winner of this fight next?
It's hard not to. I mean, that's the natural fit. I mean, the muddy thing about Tony Ferguson backing out, a week before is at the end of this fight, let's say it's Khabib, let's say he wins, for argument's sake, 3 fighters will have some claim to being the top 155-pounder in all of mixed martial arts.
Wow.
That's an unprecedented situation. I think Khabib, provided he has a dominant performance, is number one. But plenty of people support Conor. Plenty of people support Tony Ferguson. So the idea of him not fighting the winner of this fight, I mean, who else would he fight? It's just the most natural fit.
Does the GSP fight still trump whoever wins this? If Holloway wins this, we spoke to Dave Meltzer about this earlier. If Holloway wins this, and it's one of those perfect storylines where I've got both of your belts, you beat me before, but we can do it again, and this time, you can get your belts back. Do you think that trumps a potential super fight that would be GSP for a 165-pound belt?
Wow. A lot of conjecture there about what would fall in line, but yeah, let's just say for argument's sake.
Let's say the fans are lucky for once, and things go.
Yeah.
No one trips over in a studio, and things work out.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that's a tough one. What GSP has that maybe doesn't get enough credit, he's got a whole country behind him, and so build a new stadium in Canada to hold this fight, and it'll sell out. I mean, so it's a matter of where's the most money, and also. Conor McGregor's he's not a big 55, big 45er, not a big 55er. GSP just won a belt at middleweight. And so it would kind of be Conor a little bit taking the leap of faith or taking the risk going up when he can fight a guy he's already beaten, who's a natural 45er, 455-pound belt. There's so many different variables to this, but it's what lineup makes the most money. Let's be honest. I mean, that and both would be huge.
Of course. Before we let you go, Jimmy, and by the way, we appreciate your time. Just quickly got to touch on some of the other fights. Obviously, Joanna Jedrzejczyk takes on Rose Namajunas in a huge rematch, one that I would say is being very, very much overlooked. The interesting thing is, obviously, Joanna has spoken out about and blamed her weight cut leading into the first fight for her performance. A lot of people say it was a case of maybe her looking too far into the future and just overlooking Rose. And the fact that Rose just really, didn't bite when it came to Joanna's usual mind games. In your opinion, why do you think the first fight played out the way it did?
I think Joanna Jedrzejczyk wasn't ready for the kind of fight Rose brought to her. I mean, we're talking about somebody who's known for their wrestling, known for their takedown, known for their jiu-jitsu, their submission skills. She went out there and kickboxed and looked fantastic. And one thing about this fight is it ended third minute of the first round. there was no time to adjust and like, oh man, it's a totally different fight. What am I? You know, she was kind of like stuck, kind of that deer in the headlights. She didn't look sharp that night because I think it was a different fight than the one she expected. She wasn't defending takedowns. She was defending left hooks. And that's something she probably didn't train for that much, wasn't quite ready for. Maybe she hit harder than she realized. And so she never had time to make those physical or mental adjustments. Well, it's had a lot of time since to make those adjustments.
Mm-hmm. How do you think mentally she'll be affected by after her first MMA loss, knockout loss? You know, how will that affect her? Do you think she's going to be better in there? Do you think if it comes down to a similar situation, do you think she goes back to that first fight and sort of goes back into that situation where she realizes, oh, no, I'm going to get knocked out, and she loses her self-confidence? And how do you think this fight plays out differently to the first one?
I think this plays out, in a sense, in the opposite way, where in that first 2 minutes, she's going to do everything she can to show Rose, I'm not affected. I'm the better fighter. I'm not scared. I'm not fighting. It might make her too reckless. Rather than get hit and go, oh my God, I'm going to lose, I think she's going to get hit and just like go for broke and go, you know, her pride will be a big factor because I'm trying to show that I'm still the same fighter I was. And so rather than maybe, you know, clear your head a little bit, keep your hands up and kind of get it back, we're going to see maybe a Joanna Jedrzejczyk who might be a little more emotional than we're used to seeing her because she doesn't want to show any weakness. She doesn't want to show any fear. She wants to show that it was just a fluke. I'm still the better fighter. So what I think it's going to lead to is A, a fast start, and B, kind of an unwillingness to step backward even when it might benefit her.
Wow. And that's interesting because it was sort of... It would sort of fall in line with, you know, I guess what's happened in the past where whenever Joanna has been hurt in the past, she does come back and she does wear it very well. Yeah. There's also some really, really fun lightweight fights on the card. You know, it's a bit of a lightweight showcase. You got Michael Chiesa and Anthony Pettis, Ally Quinton and Paul Felder. That's going to be a fun scrap. You got Renato Moicano and Calvin Kattar. That's a big one for the featherweight division. Felice Herrig, she's looking to expand, you know, her win streak against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Don't worry, we're not going to make you break down all these fights, but any other fun fights that stand out to you that you're really looking forward to? And feel free to pick, you know, from any of the ones that I just mentioned.
Oh, man, I love them. One I'm really looking forward to is Pettis versus Chiesa. I mean, it's one of those where Chiesa, when he gets his positioning, when the fight's going the way he wants it to, he's what I call a front runner. Once he's out ahead, it's very hard to catch him. And then Pettis is one of those guys, former champion at 155. He still has that name. When people say Anthony Pettis, oh man, Showtime, the Showtime kick, he was literally on a Wheaties box. And I've always said one of the worst places to be in this sport is you have the name, but you're having trouble defending it. He's been on a slide in his last few fights. Hasn't quite recaptured that glory, but everybody remembers the name Pettis. So what happens? Your opponents are always motivated. They're always sharp. They're always ready. Oh, my God, you know, I can beat Anthony Pettis, the former champ. You still have that name. You still have that glory, but technically you're slowing down a little bit. He can't afford that because I think Chiesa is going to be at his best.
All right, well, Jimmy, we're excited to check out your work, UFC 223. Jimmy Smith, Joe Rogan, Jon Anik. It's going to go down. It's going to be an exciting pay-per-view. Thank you so much for your time, Jimmy. We're looking forward to it. Just before we go, any messages out there to your fans around the world before you step up UFC 223? What should we be looking out for? What about a little fashion preview? Is there something we need to be looking out for from Jimmy Smith?
Oh, I'm going to be dressed up. I'm going to have the suit and everything ready to go. You know, so if you can tell them apart, I'm the guy in the suit. All right, goatee suit, that's Jimmy Smith.
Awesome.
All right, probably black shirt. Joe Rogan. That's how you tell us apart.
Awesome. And no calls from Jon Anik mid-interview, so there's enough reason to celebrate. Of course, guys, don't forget to follow him at Jimmy Smith on Twitter as well. Jimmy, always appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
And there he is, Jimmy Smith, coming onto Submission Radio. Ahead of UFC 223, cast no less, with him and Joe Rogan and Jon Anik coming together. It's like the Avengers Infinity War. It's like when Disney bought Fox, and now X-Men might be with the Avengers, so it makes it even juicier. Very, very lucky to have him come on Submission Radio and speak to us and take some time out of his busy schedule. For people who don't realize, Jimmy Smith is actually one of the nicest guys out there in the business. He's like Stephen Thompson nice, which is very, very nice. On the Timothy Johnson mustache scale, that's like a
6
plus 1,000. You know, it goes up to 6, but you know, these guys are super nice. So great to speak to him. Good to see Jon Anik not interrupting our conversation. Who knows? Apparently he's looking at tattoo bets around this main event, so maybe he is busy talking to a tattoo artist or his wife, trying to explain another tattoo. Who knows? But yeah, great to chat to Jimmy. Now, Cass, as we wrap up the show, and by the way, first video show for Submission Radio, sort of in the books. And I know it's different. People are going to be like, whoa, video, this is crazy. Why didn't this happen like 4 years ago? Well, it's taken a little bit of time, but we're here now. But partly for me to blame because I'm a bit weird with video. But, you know, great experience to do it on video. Very, very different. And for everybody watching at home who think it's looking a little bit different, a little bit unnatural at times, hey, we're getting used to this, you know. We're getting used to this crazy journey. So stick with us because I'm sure it's going to get crazier along the way. But Cass,
you want to hear unnatural? Listen to the first ever episode of Submission Radio. That's unnatural. When I hear that, I'm like, who are these guys? And then I realize it's us, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. And then I die inside. So
yeah,
it's all a process.
I hate that guy. Hey, that guy is me. I hate myself. This is a tough life. But before we wrap up, just quickly, we'll give our predictions, I suppose, on what we think about what's going to happen in this main event. Obviously, Holloway stepping in, Khabib versus Holloway in this main event. Cass, who do you think is going to be winning here? Well, who are you leaning towards? Is it the Khabib, or are you going to take the big chance? You're going to take the big risk. You're going to go Max Holloway here.
I am taking no chances, and that's no disrespect to. I'm a coward. I can admit it. It's no disrespect to Max Holloway. Look, I think when Max Holloway is on 100% full camp, I think this is a very, very compelling fight. I'm still excited for it, no less, but there's just some things that I find very troubling. When you hear George Lockhart, his nutritionist, Max Holloway, speak about how he's going on a keto diet, so no carbohydrates. So there is a good chance that Max Holloway, you know, he might even waste away in terms of muscle. They're not going for performance. It's all about making weight. And when you hear his nutritionist say that this is going to be tied for probably the toughest and biggest weight cut that anyone has ever done, you know, under his tutelage or his care, that's very troubling. On top of all the other factors, like the fact that he's coming off an ankle injury, and if you're Max Holloway, the big key and maybe advantage of being fully prepared and at 100% would be the footwork that you have, that you can maybe use to stifle Khabib with, where. Yeah, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have the endurance. He won't have the strength. It's all about making the weight. And also, you look at the Edson Barboza fight. Like, Barboza is, I don't want to say a bigger version of Max Holloway, but he is bigger, and he had an even better takedown defense rate than Max Holloway. And if he couldn't get it done, he had some success here and there, but if he couldn't get it done, you know, a smaller Max Holloway, an unprepared Max Holloway, I don't see how he wins. The only thing I will say is Max Holloway, he's very good as far as his defense. He goes in, guys swing on him, and he's very good at getting out of the way and then countering. But I also think a lot of that comes with confidence, the confidence of knowing, you know, that he had the full preparation. I don't know if that's going to be there. I wonder, though, how the mental pressure will play a factor. I think it's by far going to be a lot more on Khabib, and I think Max Holloway is going to go there without any pressure. I think once he makes the weight, once he gets some proper meals into him, I think he'll probably, well, I don't want to say feel better, because he's probably going to still going to feel kind of like death, but maybe just the lack of pressure and knowing in his mind on the night that, you know, he really doesn't have a whole lot to lose here, and he has an incredible amount to gain. You know, they say fighters fight best when they're relaxed. If he's going to win, it's going to be very, very early. It's going to be Khabib getting somewhat reckless and, you know, going for that takedown, and Max just finding a way to counter him. But again, he's not known for that one-punch knockout power. So I'm certainly going to go with Khabib. How he gets it done, I can't see this going the distance. I mean, I can, but I just think that he's going to wear Max Holloway down. It's going to be a TKO stoppage. I think probably in the third. I think Max is just going to be so tired. He's not going to give up. He just won't have anything left in the tank to really do much with. So Khabib, TKO, third round. That's the official one. Dennis, what about yourself?
Well, what's left to say after that, Casper?
I've left you nothing.
He's covered every single facet. I don't want to repeat what Casper said. Basically, agree with a lot of it. He mentioned you're a coward. I don't think you're a coward. I think you're a realist. Look, the fact of the matter is I think Khabib is going to win. But when people talk about everything's pointing against Max Holloway except for the mental game. And when people talk about the mental game, I don't know how many of our listeners have sort of been in a ring. Like, I haven't had a professional fight. I know you, Casper, have done a little bit of MMA training. You've done a lot of Sambo and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. But I will say that the mental edge is a big edge. And when you go in there and you don't have the pressure of the fight on your shoulders for that amount of time, and you're going in there and you're picking up a big check. It is a big check for Max Holloway, and he is thinking about the future of his family and trying to make as much money as he can while this whole thing's going. You know, you're happy about that. You make the weight. You realize, all right, this money's coming my way. There's no pressure on my shoulders. We may see an upset in this fight early on, like you mentioned, Casper, because it is a big mental advantage when you don't have that pressure, and some people perform much better without that pressure. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see if that's enough. I don't think it will be. I think Khabib wins this. I agree with you. Maybe a TKO about the 4th round. But if Max Holloway, make no mistake about this, if Max Holloway is able to make it to the end of this fight and Khabib wins by decision, to me, that's a victory already there for Max Holloway, a guy that's come in without a proper camp, a guy that's cutting weight, a guy that's possibly got an ankle injury. If he looks decent in this fight, he's a winner. If he gets beaten early, he's got an excuse. And if he wins this, he's on his way to a huge money fight with Conor McGregor. So all signs point to him not really losing too much, even if things don't work out for him. If he gets knocked out in the first round horribly by Khabib, which wouldn't happen because Khabib's not really a striker, but if, let's say, Khabib takes him down and submits him easily in the first round, that does hurt him. I think it does hurt him. The excuses don't cover that completely. But everything else, I think Max Holloway still walks away smelling roses. So good on him for taking the opportunity. Good on everybody these days for throwing in their hat in the ring when an opportunity comes up. And I can't wait to see UFC 223. And I can't wait to see, Casper, if Conor McGregor is there and if Max Holloway wins or Khabib wins, if they bring him into the ring, if they try and start building something straight away. It's all very interesting from there on. So a lot of questions there. And they will be all answered this weekend. So very excited for this weekend.
Hopefully they'll be answered. We'll see. Maybe nothing will be answered. Some things will be answered.
People will trip over in the back going to the octagon. All fights will be cancelled.
As we let you guys go, let us know what you think about this video show in general. Leave your feedback, leave your comments in the comment section below. Of course, as always, we're available on iTunes and everywhere where podcasts can be found. And of course, Podcast One Australia. That's the big one. We hope you enjoyed it. Guys, any last final thoughts, any last messages, Dennis, before we sign off?
Yeah, one of the things is we found out this is kind of cool. We're the finalists for the sports category in the podcast awards here in Australia. So that's really cool. We've got some great competitors in there. For people that are local and listen to the shows, there's some cricket shows, some footy shows. So it's great to be in the mix there. Representing MMA, you guys can check that out. We'll be chucking that up on Twitter and stuff like that. You know, just to be mentioned in the category and just to be a finalist, because I think thousands of shows have applied for this thing. And
we're not expecting to win, just to be clear, but it's good to be in there.
Yeah, it's good to be in there. We might go on the night, have a few beers, have a bit of fun, you know. It's a little bit like the Oscars. You get nominated, you're happy that you're nominated, but Meryl Streep always wins, that bitch. So we'll see what happens, but very happy about that. Very happy to be back. Very happy to be doing this video show. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Big thanks to John Morgan, Jimmy Smith, and Dave Meltzer for doing the show with us. Tommy Toehold, of course, coming in and doing his thing. We love Tommy Toehold on the show. Please support all of our guests. Please support all the people that come onto Submission Radio. Please give us an iTunes review. Leave us a comment below, and we will catch you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.